For today's lesson, we're going to take a look at IELTS Academic Task 1, a graph. I've got an example and a structure, etc. So let's go behind the screen and we'll take a look. So let's take a look at Academic Writing Task 1. Now, as you know, you have to write a report based on visual information and data. So it could be a graph, a pie chart, a table, a combination of these things. We don't need any opinions, we don't need any reasons why the data might show what it does, no personal views. It's purely a report. The table graph shows the number of people, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is one reason why it's only worth 1/3 of your total writing score, because it's purely what you see. You know, when you're talking about writing an essay, you have to give reasons, examples, you need a good set of ideas, etc. Now, the criteria for task 1, basically same. You still need your grammar and vocab, etc. Let's just have a quick look at it. I'll show you now. Where are we? Come here. Yeah. So, you know, this is the official table. I'm sure that you've seen it. Uni Cambridge, British Council, IDP. So it's the same as you've probably seen in the essay, the tutorials. Grammar, axis, cohesion, coherence, task, achievement. So it's exactly the same. They count the number of sentences without a mistake. Same for this. Cohesion, coherence, they want that logical progression, organization, you know, logic, a sequence, etc. Now, because we're talking about the academics, there's a slight difference in task achievement between the general training and the academic. Now, I made a couple of videos about a letter task, formal and informal. Now, the task achievement there, now, you know, obviously you have to write 150 words, etc., you know. But for the general training, because you're writing a letter, you have to have a clear purpose of what you write, you know, of why you are writing, who you're writing to, and the tone. In other words, how formal or informal is it, depending on whether it's a formal letter or an informal letter to a friend. So what we're going to have a look at now is the academic one. So one thing here, a very common mistake that lots of people make, which I hope that you don't, they don't include an overview. In other words, a summary sentence after your introduction that tells you what's the main general features or trends. What's the biggest, what's the highest, etc. You know. Now, you don't put any detail in the overview. Just what's the general trends, as I say, differences or stages. If it's a process, which we looked at a few weeks back, you basically list the number. You know, so. The chart shows a man-made process with 5 stages, etc. So that's one thing there. So we'll take a look at this in a second. So we have to have an overview to get a 7, at least a 6, we have to have an overview, and we have to present, highlight, illustrate the key features. Now, again, this is a problem that some people have because they find it difficult to differentiate between what's a key feature, and they end up writing every single thing down. Every dip and trough and rise on a graph. They put in too much information. They find it difficult to just, you know, choose the main features. Anyway, so that's something we'll have a look at. So that's the criteria. Let me get that out of the way. Boom, boom, boom. So, what's a structure then that we can use? Well, you'll see, in common with the essay, sentence 1, very first sentence, we've got to paraphrase the question. Okay, now that's quite easy. It's basically just, the same as for the essay. The table illustrates the number of people who do this and that in 2016, etc. That's quite easy. Now, then we have to have an overview. Now, again, this is one of the big mistakes that people make that don't know. They don't include an overview, a summary. So, overview of the first main feature, the second and the third. Because there's usually only 2 or 3 most important, obvious features, as we'll see in a moment. Then, we want, for paragraph 3 and 4, you go into it and explain it with the details, with the data. What's the percentage, what's the number, what's the date, what's the year, etc. So, there's no figures. No figures or information or data here. You only introduce the data in paragraph 3 and 4. Okay, now you'll notice we don't have a conclusion because there's nothing to conclude. It's not an essay. Okay, so there's no opinions, no conclusion. It's purely a report based on what you see. So let's have a quick look at an example. I don't know if you can see this. If this is big enough. Okay, so as we see, it's a graph. Let's take a look. The line graph below shows a percentage of tourists to England who visited 4 different attractions in Brighton. We have to summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons. Write at least 150 words. So, what you do then first, it's a good idea to make a plan. It doesn't need to be a very extensive plan because it's not an essay. There's no main ideas or reasons or examples. So instead, though, we just have to spend a bit of time making sure we understand it. So if we look at the axes, we've got a 30-year period. 1980, 2000, 2010, okay. In percentages, okay. 4 different things: art gallery, pavilion, pier, and festival. Now, one thing that we do have to pay attention to is your vocabulary for the different tasks is specific. So for the graph, what we need here, we need to more accurately talk about the rate and speed of change. We'll come to that in a moment when I show you the example. Some people tend to use the same language. It's a rise, it's a fall, first it fell, then it rose, then it fell, then it rose, without talking about the, how, the rate or speed. For example, if we look at this one, pier, we can see, despite some fluctuations, the general trend is upwards. It's a steady trend. It's not a dramatic rise, it's not a very sharp rise like we can see here. It's not a significant rise up to a peak. It's more or less, despite some fluctuations, it's a relatively steady upward trend. Okay. For the festival, it's relatively stable. If you look at the amount of variation, it's not significant in any sense. If we look at the gallery, we can see a sharp rise or a sudden rise to a peak, followed by an equally sudden fall, and then a gradual decline to the end of the period. Okay, the pavilion, if we look at that, we can see it's not as sharp as that one, but still it's a significant rise, a significant increase. You can either use nouns or verbs, it doesn't actually matter which. A significant increase from this percentage to this, to a peak, and then a sharp fall followed by a gradual decline. Okay, so we have to, I say, to pick up your vocab points, we have to more accurately describe the rate and the speed of change. So let's have a quick peep at an example. So you've seen the structure, let's have a look. So, introduction at first. Sentence 1 we paraphrase. As you see, the line graph shows the percentage of tourists to England who visited certain Brighton attractions between 1980 and 2010. So, you can change the word order. Let's just have a quick peep at the picture. So again, percentage of tourists to England who visited Brighton attractions from 1980 to 2010. So that's it. That's all the information that we, need. Now, the overview. We're looking for the most obvious features. So as we can see, the most favourite attractions, a superlative, were the pavilion and the festival. If we take a look again, pavilion and festival. Oops, festival. Oh dear, that is wrong. Pavilion. Oh no, pavilion and festival, because that goes down. Yeah, so pavilion and festival. And least popular, and how that changed. So it can be seen that in 1980 and 2010, most favourite attractions were the pavilion and the festival. In 1980, the least popular attraction was the pier, but in 2010 this changed, and the art gallery was the least popular. So as you see, there's no figures, there's no data in that. So introductory sentence, the overview, there's no figures or data. Now, paragraph 3 and 4, this is where we go into it. So, during the 1980s and 1990s, there was a sharp increase, as we just saw in the graph, a sharp increase. So this is what I was referring to about the speed, rate and speed of change, to more accurately describe it. So it was a sharp increase from 28% to 48%. Now we're using the data. And the percentage gradually went down to 31%. Now, you will see here that I'm only talking about two points for the pavilion. Sharp increase, and then the percentage had a gradual fall. I'm not talking about every single little peak or dip, or, One, you don't have space. Two, you don't have time. So it's just the most obvious features, the most important things. So the next one, the gallery. The trend was a similar rapid increase from 22% to 37%. So figures again gradually decreased to less than 10%. Blah, blah, blah. So figures and data, rate and speed of change. Okay, and then we can put the last two in. The number of tourists who visited the Brighton Festival showed a fluctuation, as I said, but in general, not a lot of change. Visitors to the pier, a fluctuation, then a significant rise, 12% to 22%. So this is where you're using the figures and data. Now, as you'll see, it's only 163 words. It's not a lot. 150 a minimum, but 163 words, that would be fine, because you are mentioning most of the major features. That's it. There's no need to be talking about every single dip or rise, or talk about this, or this. You don't have space, you don't have time. It's just, as the criteria said, as I said, The main features, not every single feature. Okay, now it might take a bit of practice before you get used to what those are, but that is basically it. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to be spending a lot of time on this one. I'm going to do a few more examples of the pie chart and the tables, the combinations of those. But essentially, you can use this structure for all of the data-based tasks. If we take a look again, it's pretty straightforward. You paraphrase the overview into the details. That's it. No conclusion, no long-winded introduction, because it's not an essay. Right, that's it. I'll post all these on the blog site if you want to look at them and copy them. And I'll see you next time. Okay.